This video game review is brought to you by, that's right, absolutely nobody. What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and as always, it's my continuing mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. And today's review is Immortals Fenyx Rising from Ubisoft, coming out soon for $59.99 for pretty much every single platform. Now, in the midst of two other recent Ubisoft games, the question raised in my head, is this an exciting Bob Ross rendition of the Assassin's Creed games, with the consistent killing culled to a less prodigious level, or should it just be rated LBOTW for, like Breath of the Wild, and put into a stack of pretenders? Not as cool as that, not as good as the third-person action-adventure role-playing parkour climbing sword-swinging games it takes inspiration from. And check the genre, there's actually a litany of these titles. Also, yes, this game used to be called Gods and Monsters. I can only assume some Twitter account showed that shitty name games were somehow underrepresented currently and threatened to cancel Ubisoft, so they straight up stuck with Fenyx Rising. But it's not the only crappy name game out there. And we've seen them do well, so let's see if it's elevated above all that. If you guys like the video, I'd love for you to subscribe. Stay tuned, we've got Cyberpunk reviews as well as another PS5 and Xbox Series X giveaway. So here's my review for Immortals Fenyx Rising, fickle gods, celestial mobs, and the importance of stretching your getaway knobs. Graphics are up first. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that sometimes Ubisoft games can feel like the digital form of semantic satiation. Half the time, their actions are repeated so much, they lose all meaning. And you're like the guy saying the word pork over and over and over again because it's lost all meaning. Except here, you're in one of 50 versions of their towers, watching a spinning camera shoved up a bird's ass to show you that you've synchronized the local area. Ubisoft here, though, went the other way, and it works most of the time. Let's get some of the bad out of the way first. The characters look like something from the old Fate game that was like the original Diablo game, even worse. Or like Torchlight 1, they have this strange world police nightmare Muppet look to them at all times. But it comes up even more when they flex or pose on the screen like the developers of Fable worked on the game, but they were only asked to do that last camera moment. It's not necessarily Uncanny Valley, at least, but if you have a giant-headed doll with huge eyes who's going to choke you in the night death fetish, this thing's going to trigger it over and over again. I don't like them. They don't look right, and no matter what beard or mustache you staple or super glue on this ugly-ass's face, he always looks more like this than you would actually like him to. But then the game breaks out into the world, and I just forgot about that other stuff. This is exactly what I was hoping for and betting completely against. If the precursor of Fenyx is Zelda, Assassin's Creed, Fable, and others, then at the very least, it has defined a place for itself in offering wonder at momentary conveniences again and again and again, and at least equal to some of those titles. It's not the highest detail when it comes to textures. It's far more of the wow in the current day color scheme as well, but it's also this refreshing antithesis of Valhalla's brown-green diatribe against color. It just looks like the people who had to work on the Assassin's Creed games in the past all got money to buy new monitors and figured out what the fuck color gamut was. And just exploring the world, it was impossible to not relish in the landscape stretching out beside you or around you as you ride a captured deer across the glade, and the main bad guy, who lives in a volcano, belches out a fancy tap-dancing warrior for you to fight as the entire world changes to an overcast, cloudy, bloody red day, and he's just in the background, laughing maniacally. On first glance, sure, it could look generic, and those characters' faces do it no favors, but man, it's got the rocks when it comes to everything else. Including the animations for battle, these are more dynamic and they're certainly larger in their feel than the Assassin's Creed game, which makes sense because at the start of the game, you basically strap on a pair of metal wings made from feathers and a Cabela's tent skeleton. It's not surprising you're going to have some Michael Jordan-like hang time on a lot of the moves. It's still familiar though, and perhaps to some people, maybe too much so. But for me, even having played this with a skeptical eye towards its similarities, it wasn't any more guilty of cribbing style or movement than many other titles it may be compared to, and better yet, for the most part, it's a good deal more responsive when you do fight. And make no mistake, you will see weapons passing through enemies unless you've stunned them or it's a special move. That's the way these kind of battles are. This isn't a physics-perfect rendition of combat. It's more about perfect dodging through an enemy's attack to snicker snack him in the back before he makes you a snack. Performance isn't that shabby either. With an i7 at 4.9 and a 2080 Ti, 4K was locked at 60. There was one or two drops here or there when it was in a cutscene, but it actually didn't occur in all of them at all. Additionally, with a 1080 Ti, you're easily able to get 1440p. There is a resolution slider here as well as a dynamic settings adjustment. I would say go with the resolution slider. Once again, we do have that kind of weird issue where the dynamic settings never really seem to catch up with everything else. And catching up in Fenyx is sort of the name of the game. game, because this is a title with an incredibly long draw distance. You do see some pop in here or there, but overall, the major parts of the geometry are actually there at all times, and it is a massive, incredibly cluttered, very fantastic feeling world. Very hard to do. I was actually quite surprised. It's also refreshing to just see this style like this. With every Assassin's Creed or Watch Dogs title, though I like them, they always feel like that edgy teenager not wanting to have fun at a family gathering because they're just, oh, so real, dude. But then when they're sulking in a corner, somebody else's kid comes over and you're like, maybe we could trade children. And any feeling of genericness actually wore off quite quickly for me, and I was just stunned at the enjoyment that I saw in this colorful world. And that brings us to sound, music, and voice.
I found your axe!
Phoenix approached the axe, feeling it call to him.
Looks like the axe of Atalanta. It must be a copy.
And let's do sound first, because sound was an issue with Valhalla. Luckily, Fenyx suffers few of the issues Valhalla had. It has a higher sample rate and a clarity to almost all the samples that is really dramatically better than Valhalla's. However, I wasn't necessarily in love with the samples variation. Regardless of the weapon attacks and the sword or the axe or the bow, they didn't have enough variability that I would have liked. They're passable, they play clearly across the spectrum as long as you make sure to go into the audio settings and fiddle around a little bit. One place where Fenyx does elevate itself is the excellent use of environmental sounds, from birds crashing through the trees to escape you as you startled them with a stunning Birdman dive to land on the cliff next to them, or the world-shattering reverberation of stone giants drilling themselves into the ground as they turn into fucking laser versions of your neighbor's front yard watering systems. Excellent definition for the surround, as well as the good measure of separation, informs the gamer of the enemy's locations, which is very useful in a game like this because it does have a tendency to throw a large number of enemies at you, regardless if they're flying, rolling, shooting, or just spinning and stabbing you. Good sound overall, with a little bit of an issue here and there. And that brings us to music. So by this time, I'm pretty sure Gareth Coker is just born of a series of genetic experiments where they continued to breed more and more sensitive ears and then stapled some legs on at the end when they were happy. Every single title, he just has this excellent way of making sure that there's not only a defining of the game and feeling like natural accompaniments to all the tracks, but consistently feeling different between games. Here, each region has their own music stylings, but they also naturally merge between battle and exploration. And that game's use of orchestral large pieces is good, but it's the deft way he uses a software to manage momentary hooks, like a moment where a single percussion begins the next piece, or that, oh crap, it's really quiet kind of feeling you get in some locations where nothing but a single instrument is just sort of flitting around you, and that loneliness starts to creep in. Both are excellent, but both also seal emotion up like a fucking Ziploc bag made of your feelings. And that is awesome for the soundtrack, not so good for the voices because they have no feelings at all and you notice it. It's probably the worst written major title from them in a long time. The humor's nowhere near hit and miss. It's just mostly miss, and it's like they're not trying. It's slightly adult-tuned fare, then it slides back into childlike motifs. And it's like listening to an edgy comedian where the censorship only works like 45% of the time. The main characters and those that he deals with just aren't that interesting either. One bright section of this is that a couple side characters you meet, including one of the main bad guys himself, at the very least kept me interested in what was going on, and they were a solid framework. But a lot of time I was playing this game, it felt like somehow I had got the normal and director's cut versions of the audios of a Blu-ray playing at the same time. It just really was sort of disappointing. But what wasn't as disappointing was the gameplay. So Fenyx Rising tells the story of Phoenix, brother to one of the warriors, frozen when the evil Typhon has wreaked havoc on the Golden Isle, freezing humans, releasing monsters, and basically going after all the gods himself. Zeus and Prometheus, two highly questionable narrators, tell the story of Phoenix as he travels the island, keeping the few people remaining alive and trying to gain the powers he needs to finally take out the bad guy. To do so, he has to travel the world, figure out puzzles, collect items, and in doing so, his tale is told and sometimes retold again by the narrators. Now, first things first, let's get this out of the way. For the most part, Phoenix can go anywhere from the moment the game starts. It can be a bit difficult depending on your gear, though. It can be like attacking a Mack truck with a cocktail wiener. You just slap, 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 no damage. Slap, 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 nope, nope, slap. slap, shit. Also, depending on your level of stamina, there's some jumps that you can make. I find this a really organic way in which it makes you want to continue to travel, but also informs you naturally of where you can and can't go. You might be wondering, why is he talking about can and can't go right away? It's because if this game nails anything, people, it nails the world. It nails that wonder. It's that trinity of movement that lets you discover every nook and cranny and secret and chasm and climbable thing in Fenyx. It rocks in that way. You can run and glide and boost, and once you get an upgrade to your wings, fly farther, or you can ride a number of animals that you can train and end up taming. And especially the first hour or so, I had my own thoughts about this game, and I didn't know exactly how it was going to turn out. But as each hour rolled out, I realized I just didn't care what time it was in the real world. I wanted to continue to play to see the fantastical way in which they've displayed the Golden Isle. This isn't a title that's trying to replicate a normal island. It's replicating pure fantasy. Titans are solidified into the ground mid-battle. Ancient peaks soar into the clouds, and everything has this art aesthetic that's half Bob Ross, half kid who found out there were larger sets of crayon than the 8 he got at the starting. Opal waters promise treasures if you decide to dive into them. Some locations, death. In others, you'll run out of stamina trying to swim for too long or take jumps that you can't do. And Fenyx doesn't just embrace the original Assassin's Creed idea of verticality, it reimagines it like the devs thought watercolor and climbing on monkey bars were seriously the most cool thing ever and turned it up to 20. That's Fenyx in a nutshell. The world is one giant handheld restricted by stamina and your ability to ignore that hanging off the statue's balls to try to get a little bit higher doesn't look a little funny. The exploration, the gliding, it's all there, it's connected, but the lack of graham cracker weaponry in odd situations like having to strip down your armor during lightning storms that exist in Zelda offers a little bit of a albeit shallower feeling than Zelda, but also one that is a bit more natural. That being said, the combat is not terrible, but it's also not amazing. It's a 3-weapon system. Light, which is a series of swords, all have their own dual bonuses that unlock as you level those items up. You have axes for heavy attacks that also do stun damage to enemies, and your bow and arrow, which doubles as an attack as well as a way to work through the hundreds of puzzles that span the over and middle and under worlds of the game's locations. The skill system for the weapons isn't exactly deep. It's got some upgrades and new skills that also unlock various attacks and modifiers to combat. Whatever you get here is substantial, usually an extra ending finisher for a weapon or large healing bonuses on combo kills or some other noticeable variable. You also unlock a series of godlike powers as you do quests for those couple gods remaining on the island. And those are things like massive ground hammering hits or spawning hell spears to lift enemies into the air. Now, when you get into battle, you can lock on or not. It's for sure got this Odyssey feeling to it. Now, this could be due to the lighter feeling to the character, just the designer choices themselves, but perfect dodging slows down the game world and builds upon a system that sees each enemy have a health and stun bar, with light weapons dealing more health damage and heavier ones dealing more stun. If you fill their stun bar, they're open for attacks as it reduces back to 0. Your special abilities augment all those as well with combos that can be pulled off. It's just slick and it feels good. Perfect dodging is pretty much just the X button at the right time, and parrying is the bumper with a button, and you need to learn both because the game does have a large number of mini location bosses or special enemy groups as well as main bosses, and many do require timing, pattern recognition, as well as understanding which attack goes when. However, seriously, try this on hard mode first. It's not exactly super difficult unless you don't pay attention, so watch for that. Now, between battles, not only will you be platforming, which involves stamina, but also solving puzzles. The activities in the world and the combat are all put together, but it's the world and its puzzles that sort of kept me going for a couple hours. They're not head scratchers. They're almost more like speedrun kinds of puzzles. Let me explain. For every single place you go, there's almost always something to do or a puzzle to figure out. They're not massive head scratchers, like I said, but there's that moment you think you may have one and you end up in a puzzle world looking at a spot going, I don't quite exactly understand what I'm supposed to do. It won't stop you for a long period of time. It actually isn't really supposed to stop you for a long period of time. It's more about engaging the skills that you've learned previously and putting them to use here. It's not exactly difficult. It's not the Dark Souls of puzzle games. But where Valhalla went with its different tack, with the side stories actually now being world events and just various homestead systems, Fenyx is different in the way it handles its world as well. The mystery and the enjoyment here is the juice of finding some new location, something that the dire, broken down castles and dirty ass locations that were in Valhalla didn't always trigger for me. And the idea that here we're playing a game that's not going to Candyland style the gameplay, where NPCs are going to send you on some damn wild goose chase every single second, because they don't in Fenyx, that works for me. There are major events to do. The rest is about the world itself. Also, I do like the shade system here. It's no real difference from the Assassin's Creed titles, sending out warriors to take you out if you do enough deeds. Here, if you do enough good deeds, evil crap starts to happen, and the main bad guy in the center of the world sends out some shades to take you out. What's cool here is that the difficulty can ramp up considerably, especially as the game does all this in real time, meaning if you're in a battle already or around enemies, you can find yourself against a Minotaur, an Ogre, a Demon Dog, 3 warriors, and then suddenly a shade of Achilles showing up doing the tappy-tamp dance like a fucking dog getting a treat, and then spending the next 40 seconds kicking the living shit out of you. And speaking about kicking you while you're down, yes, there are microtransactions in this game. They are customizable, and to be brutally honest, $2 to $3 for a customizable skin is what you'll be paying. More for some of the larger items. I actually like the items in the game far more than what was in the actual purchasable sets, and they didn't really offer any giant bonuses anyway. But be aware they're there, no ignoring that. When you look at it, Fenyx is a completely different beast in its beats and its world offering. Something unique that I personally found myself experiencing enjoyment as I continued to explore. And here we do have a title that does something a bit different and can look a bit generic, but its world exploration and that wow factor for finding newer and newer locations that are just awesome looking, hey, this is a top dog. And speaking of top dog, the one thing that matters most is fun factor. Ubisoft has released 3 titles in a short time frame. I wasn't quite aware of what each one was going to do, but the most mystery resulted and resounded around Fenyx. I didn't know what it was. It was the dude invited to a group chat where the person who invited him didn't show up, and so everybody's just sitting around confused going like, hey, so who are you and what do you do? As the game gets going though, it's mystical mysteries at every moment. It's fantastical moments. It's always looking on the horizon, and we're so accustomed to every single game with something that looks amazing on the horizon. You think that for sure has to be something I should pay attention to. But what's cool about Fenyx is like, nope, everything's going to look awesome and you're going to have to figure it out. And there are times even where I'm trying to figure out a puzzle, but because everything looked so cool and so poignant, I was like, am I in the actual right place right now? And that will happen. And that to me is actually some of the cool challenge. You can stand in a spot here and look around. You'll see a dappled glen, a burned out location, a series of islands, just far enough from one another to create a challenge for your stamina, as well as a snowy mountain that looks like it's made a threat and no trespassing signs. And then on another side, stone gods with frozen bodies offering paths to possible items. That's in the first couple minutes of the game. It doesn't hurt that for the most part, traversal is easy. It never opines its complexity. It never overstates its offerings. It simply says, here's this fantastical world. We know it's fantastic. Enjoy. It doesn't hit on every single cylinder, but when it does hit, it's got a bit of turbo. And that brings me to the rating. As you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, never touch it again rating system. Despite its issues, this was the most enjoyable game Ubisoft released this year. That could also be because I didn't have any bugs with this game, where I gotta admit, man, Valhalla and Legion both had bugs, and bugs directly impact your fun factor. But I got to run through here. I got to look around. I never looked at the clock, speaking of looking. Huge lengths of time I would play, and I would just be running around exploring and doing different things, and god damn, it was good. It felt nice. It felt like something that was just a bit more of a Saturday morning cartoon filter layered over this world with a little less of the grit and grime and a little bit more of the, oh wow, look over there. Unfortunately, the faces on these characters look horrendous and the voiceovers aren't the greatest. Nevertheless, everything else shined through. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you didn't. Always check out the Patreon. You can be a patron. We've got some amazing stuff there. I'm going to be doing cyberpunk videos, reviews, walking the walk, a ton of different behind the scenes stuff, as well as for patrons only. We'll have the new pen and paper ACG D&D game going on, where we're going to be doing some video of that as well, playing in the Discord, playing some Dungeons with Dragons. I know a lot of people are like, I don't like Dungeons and Dragons, you're a nerd. Listen, we're all talking about video games, and you guys are the ones who have got here to like 19 minutes, so who's the fucking nerd, right? Nah, just joking. I hope all you guys stay safe. Regardless if you like any of these games, hey, you know what? It's an amazing time to game. I hope you guys have an awesome time this week, this weekend, and enjoy the new games coming out. Peace out.